Greatness. Greatness. Bow, bow, bow. Greatness.
Yo, welcome to the Renewing the Mind podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Sanchez. Joined with me is my dad, Dr. Raul Sanchez. How you doing, Dad?
I'm feeling amazing, baby. Like back in the day at NDSU, we had a saying, those who stay will play, those who play will be champions. Once a champion, always a champion. There should be right there, baby. Check her out. Woo!
And there's the ring kiss.
Never gets old.
I thought you might stab yourself with that pencil there.
I had to move it real quick.
Sweet. Well, hey, if you're on this podcast, don't forget it. There's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't. Never forget
2
it.
times.
Renew, move, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. If you're watching on Facebook, give us a thumbs up, share this. And if you're listening to this wherever you consume your podcast, make sure you try to give us a review. That helps us out a lot. We got a couple reviews, but man, if you could give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Tonight we are moving. Are You a Planter? Part 2. So if you didn't listen to or watch part 1, you can do that after the show, where we talked about the biblical principle of sowing and reaping, that you reap what you sow, you reap where you sow, and kind of talked about the struggles of, one of the biggest struggles I struggle or I fight is, how long do I have to sow before I reap? Some of those things are just not clear cut. Like you sow for 2 months and you reap. It's not a promise or a principle that is that detailed. So we discussed that. And tonight we're talking about reaping what you did not sow. So maybe there's areas of your life where you have reaped good or bad. Most of the time in this context, we're talking about reaping bad things and thinking about, did we sow there? Who sowed there? Seeing things that maybe have been brought into our life and we're like, man, where did that come from? How did that get there? So that's kind of where we're going on this show here tonight. Any thoughts on that before we get started?
Yeah, and also the idea about being a planter, which is, we're planted in a small pot. The whole entire idea is to grow bigger, right? And get into a bigger pot and bigger pot. And then the last charge is not to just always work on me. It's important to self-care and recover. But at the same time, we have to create room and be a planter where more plants come in, which could be me mentoring you, me mentoring Nate, me mentoring a peer, me mentoring, brothers, putting out content. Like, are you a planter? Are you just worried about you, or are you planting other people? So
love it.
Both of those pieces are where we came from. And then tonight we're moving into that concept about what about you're reaping where you didn't sow. And then we're looking at 2 sides of that. One is the negative content, like the end result is negative. And then the other one is, we can look at a positive content of like, you didn't deserve it necessarily. Right. So sometimes we talk about that being gratitude as well. So we can talk about both of those 2. I'd like to start with the positive first, and we'll finish with the negative.
Before we get started, I completely forgot. We got a little surprise. If you're listening to the podcast, I apologize. You're not going to be able to see this. But if you're watching the podcast, we got a little treat for you. Check out this merch to come. Oh, what?
What?
I set it up, but it didn't. It says no.
What do you mean it says no?
I checked before. Oh, I must restart. I might bop out. I might bop out and then rejoin it, and then we'll go.
Let's see if you can get it.
Yeah. All right. Jump into the first thing. I'll listen on my phone, and I'm gonna hop back in the podcast.
All right.
Go ahead.
Get it done. Go get it. All right. So let's get it started with, we're going to talk about some positive pieces first, and here's the reference for you guys that want to know where we get our content from. A lot of that's from the Bible. You can look at that as like a story or a fable, or what we believe really happened is like, that's the true word of God. That's where we stand. That's where we come from. But here it is. It's John, the book of John 4:38. And it goes like this. It says, I sent you to reap for which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor. Let me repeat that more quickly here. I sent you to reap for which you did not labor. Others have already labored. you have entered into their labor. So what does that look like? I mean, obviously it's biblical, but let's take a look at some positive pieces like that. So, okay, so y'all know I do the ring kiss, right? I was a freshman at NDSU, 1990. It was my red shirt freshman year. Just spent a year on the bench for a whole year, learning the plays, getting big, whatever, redshirted. And then my red shirt freshman year, I played on the national championship team, and I was a starter on the special teams. So if you take a look at that, like I didn't score any points, I didn't sack any QBs, I wasn't in big games, but I was a role player, and I, went through the game, didn't make any mistakes, whatever. I did get in a punt return, hoping to get the rock, but I went to the other way. So, just ran over a dude or something. So here's the concept. Like, I entered into a bunch of seniors who literally dominated. So like one of those guys, Phil Hansen, played for the Buffalo Bills for 10 years, opposite of Bruce Smith. And, he was one of my big mentors. So I entered into their labor. I didn't put in, 5 years, but I got into the end of their labor. I entered into their labor. So I reaped where I didn't sow, if that makes sense to you. Right. So I got to like ride in their coattails. We talk about that all the time. Like, man, you rode his coattails. Then, the new coach for Tampa Bay, very first quote is, "I'm not going to apologize for inheriting a talented team." It's not. Why do we do that? We always like, "Oh, that dude sucks," he inherited a talented team. Well, it's not his issue. He just got entered into somebody's labor. And first of all, why y'all hating on people who just get a break? We pray for blessings all the time. What if you get a steal on a new truck? What if you get, an absolute discounted new house? Like, those are all blessings. And we talk about every single day in the morning. We do our, my gratitude stuff where I focus on things where I don't think I deserved it. Like, yeah, I grinded, but like, man, the payoff was 100 times more than what I grinded for. So we give all the glory and honor and praise to the Lord Jesus Christ, and we shouldn't hate that. So that's a great example of, I didn't put in the labor, but I completely reaped with the rest of the team. And I'm still talking about it, right? I mean, I was on the field, so like I feel part of it. At the end of the game, everybody's jumping in the pool, full padded up, all that kind of stuff. It was all fun. I was part of it. But did I carry a lot of weight? No, I really didn't. I was a role player, but I'm okay with that. I was a freshman. If that makes sense to y'all.
Yeah. And I think
Got
the
it?
other thing is your ability to learn under someone else then allowed you to turn around and to teach those freshmen when you became a senior. So
Yeah.
it's less about like, oh, you just rode people's coattails. Well, maybe there are some people that do that, but if you are gifted some favor or some blessing on that level, then what are you going to do to repeat that cycle for other people? So then when you're in that situation, you turn back and you start pulling other people, and then that cycle continues. I think that's a tall sign of a leader, is someone that can, take advantage of what they're given. There's a lot of people, like everyone's like, oh, LeBron James, he's so gifted. Yeah. But there's also hundreds of thousands of people that are just as gifted and talented as LeBron James, but did nothing with it.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, he's gifted and talented, but he also used that. And so, it's what did you do with the favor or the gifting or, the coattails that you were able to kind of follow? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's amazing.
Next one.
So the next one I have is marriage. So think about this. How many times do we pick on somebody who married into a family who's loaded? And especially a spouse, woman or male, who moves into a family with a family business, and they just, they got a degree, or they go through training, and they move into a company and they start to kill it. And everybody else says, oh, that's nepotism. They just bought their way in, or, their name, they have a name. By the way, why do people do that? Why does everybody hate on somebody who gets a break? It's just dumb to stop and think about it. I'm not going to say.
I wish I could work in the family business.
I'm trying to recruit you, boy. I'm trying to recruit you.
I wish I didn't have to go to school for 22 years to be in the family business.
Yeah. And see, I went to school to get out of the family business up at Roos Casino at the KD station. I was like, man, I grew up here. I want to try something new. Like, I could throw down on barbecues and graduations. That wasn't my thing. But we always talk about taco trucks and stuff like that because it's still in the blood, But stop and think about that for a minute. Like, that's somebody who didn't do all the labor, but they got grafted into the labor of a family, and then they get all the blessings, right? So you didn't reap there, or you didn't sow there, but you definitely reap there. Another one that I found that I think about a lot is when, in football, when your team's not too great, and then you actually inherit through free agency, you get a blessed player. And if you think about Brady went out and told his coaches, like, hey, I'll take a cut. I need you to go buy AB, I need you to go buy Grunk. right? And then we all laugh like, oh, you bought that. But like everybody celebrates the Yankees and they buy everybody every single year. If you got the cash, why are you trying to play fair? Just, bro, we got the cash. Right. So those are all just some silly examples, but they're real life. And there's a lot of other examples like that where you step into a position where somebody just retired and they're going to mentor you, and all of a sudden they put a word in and boom, you get in. Right.
Yeah, I think in all of those situations, and the point I wanted to bring was that you know the saying, "There's never a free lunch. Someone always paid for it." Same
Yeah.
thing with this. Even if you're reaping where you didn't sow, someone else sowed there.
Correct.
And so if we go the sports analogy, you can go the marriage analogy, you can go the inheriting a family business. Someone still had to sow. You just happened to get to reap. It's not. It's a biblical principle that will not be broken. Maybe you're not the one sowing, but someone did.
Yeah.
It might be a free lunch to you, but someone paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. So like, I'm moving into coaching CEOs, and just at a lunch on Friday, and it comes back, and or we argue about a little bit, but he paid the ticket, and I was like, dude, you've already paid me. What are you doing? But it's this idea that you keep pouring in content, pouring in value, and then next thing you know, they're still trying to pay your lunch, or still trying to buy you things, and I'm like, dude, you already pay me. Okay. And that's just where, like, you continue to reap those blessings, even though I didn't earn that meal. I didn't work for it. It's not my cash. You see what I'm saying? So if you start to pay attention to how many times you literally get blessed, even though you didn't do the work, that's where you start to have more gratitude. But I think so many of us are so quick to knock down everybody's blessing, knock down everybody's opportunity, knock down everybody's gratitude, that we just don't even see our own. Then we become so blinded by our perception, the negative goggles that we put on, that we don't get to see it. Okay. Any others from the positive side on that? You muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
The only other thing I would just say is it shows to me a mature person, spiritually and emotionally and leadership wise, if you can celebrate in other people's success. And I think that, that's what we're talking about, regardless if they earned it or you feel like they did, or they're reaping what they didn't sow. A sign of someone that's mature on all levels is celebrates those people around us that succeed. And just because they're succeeding doesn't mean that we have to fail. It's not like one can succeed and then it causes you to fail. We both can succeed.
Yes.
Like, why not bring the tide up for everyone? And I always tell that in youth group, like we'll do a drawing and we'll do like the whole drum roll thing, and then we'll be like, okay, Raul wins, and everyone's like, boo, Raul sucks. It's like right up until then, everyone's super happy, and as soon as the one person gets it, they're like, that person always wins, I never win. It's like, well, there's only one person.
Right.
You see the mature people like, oh, I'm happy for you. That's awesome. So I'll just say, regardless of who you see succeeding in your life, or who, celebrate everyone, man. Celebrate everyone that's trying, whether you think it or not, whether you think it was unmerited favor or not, man. Celebrate people's successes. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Did you get the thing working?
Yeah. Well, it says it's working, so we'll see. This is a preview. If you're, like I said before, if you're listening, I apologize. You can come watch the video. To the podcast listeners, it's been a long time coming. And we got some exciting news. I can just give you just a glimpse. Boom!
Let's go.
Boom!
Let's go. Yeah. Here we go. Let's go.
2 times.
That's sick.
So we can't give away too many details, but we'll just say that there might be some things moving in the near future with the logo and some other options.
Yes. And praise God, that is actually trademarked, so it's ours.
So no screenshotting and trying to steal it, people.
Unless you tag us.
Yeah, you can tag us.
That way you don't hear from my attorney.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll be getting some of that stuff. So hopefully some of the merch here coming soon. But we just wanted to show that the 2 times.
2 times would be great, baby. Let's go.
So we'll hopefully put up that on some other stuff.
What?
All right.
Check it out.
On to the next one.
Woo, shoo. 2. Here we go.
I got to get mine up. I got to work on my background.
Yeah. Oh, and shout out to Stacy. She, my wife, she bought those for us. So me and Tyler got to get them displayed.
Yep.
She's good at that. She spots all kinds of stuff. All right, the negative. So this is where it like kind of everything falls apart. So negative reaping. So the next verse is 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad influence kind of stuff, bad association, like hanging out with the wrong people, maybe even being unequally yoked, having a bad business partner, getting together with somebody with don't have the same values with you. So the verse is 1 Corinthians 15:33, and it says, bad company corrupts good character. And so that's the same kind of thing, like hanging out with somebody. And this is so hard to talk about because people don't quite understand the repercussions. Like you might be stepping into like somebody who's just about to get hailed on, like a hailstorm, and then your car gets all dinged up, and then you're all mad about it, and you're like, I didn't do anything. Right? You probably didn't, but you got inside of that person's umbrella and that person's energy and that person's reaping, and he's reaping or she's reaping what has been sowed for what, a decade or something, or you're not even sure. Now, when you get into the biblical scripture stuff, it talks about somebody who has an evil altar. They've been worshiping something or doing something that's against God's, um, will for that person, and then that person reaps negative, and then but can't put it together. And the number one reason people don't put together is because the delayed consequences are so hard to catch. If I walk by, a toddler or whatever who touches a hot glass of coffee or touches a stove, and they start bawling really quickly, they'll walk clear around the stove. They'll avoid anything. But when something happens 2 months later, how about 2 years later? There's no way you can connect it. It's like, where'd that come from? What did I do to deserve this? And people fall apart, and that's stuff that you got to think about. So, it could be anything from like doing steroids, and you're hanging around the wrong company. And then, so, that guy goes down, you go down too. A bad business partner who's, doing things where, let's say violating IRS rights, stuff like that. And then you go down, your business crashes and you lose all your internal investments. Sure, you did nothing, right? But you're hanging in that situation where you go down. So people always say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's kind of the situation. And it's difficult to talk about because from all circumstances, there's nothing you did wrong. Okay. And so that's the hardest part, is the negative association, because you're near like the strike zone. And so I was talking to a military person once who said it's very simple. He's like, you're kind of having a hard time describing it because you're talking in a circle. He goes, I get it. All you have to say is collateral damage. Is like, we might have a drone strike on a building, but there might be a house that goes down because a big part of shrapnel smokes that house, and you might take out 4 civilians. That's collateral damage. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, there's a good way to put it, right?
Yep.
Okay. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. I always tell students it's a little bit more simple and youth kind of geared to them, but I always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I think it's the same type of concept. That's depending on who you hang around. You kind of sometimes reap what they're sowing, whether you know it or not. And some of those situations are unavoidable, unfortunately, because people they're hiding their shame, and they're hiding some of the things they're sowing in evil. So it's not even like, oh man, I missed it. It's like, no, you probably didn't even know it was happening. Or it was happening in a way that they were shame, and they were planting evil and hiding it from you. So, and then there's other situations where you maybe missed it. You maybe turned a blind eye. You maybe said, no, I love Raul, so I'm going to continue to hang out with him, or, I'm going to get into a relationship where hopefully he'll change, or hopefully he'll turn from the red flags I see.
Right.
Or some of them are just like, hopefully the shrapnel won't hit me, or hopefully I'll beat the statistics, or, beat the odds. And unfortunately, we know some of those situations don't end up that working in our favor.
Yeah. And one of the worst things that happened to us is, and I'm not going to talk about numbers, but like from 2006 to 2012, we had someone in my office, we were in a partnership. We had somebody in the office who had embezzled a lot of cash, like thousands of cash, from me specifically, and then from the practice. And that put us way back because all the numbers on investments, all the numbers on slush funds in the office, everything was forged. Everything was calculated like, with growth factors. So like when you looked at it, every time you looked at it, it looked like everything was growing. Everything was looking at growing, at least past inflation. So it didn't catch your eye until we got a note from a bank member that said, "Hey, your slush fund's dry. I don't know if you knew that or not." And we're like, "Wait, what? There's no way." So that just turned crazy. And it got to a point where we actually had to invest in a forensic auditor who looked back and traced and could find every piece that we knew. So I did nothing wrong, right? It just is what happened to me. I got swept up in that office because there was somebody doing something evil and illegal, and you didn't know it. And so those are the kind of situations where it's exact opposite. I didn't do any of the sowing, but I also reaped, right? I didn't enter into any of that labor, but I also reaped. And those are sad pieces, and that's just part of life. But it helps me to really pay attention, like how you really vet staff better, right? You really focus on the character of staff and the history of staff, and you have to ask some very, very serious questions to let somebody into your inner circle. But lesson learned.
Well, I mean, and learning from that situation, now there does need to be maybe a little bit more serious checks and balances when it comes to finances over a long period of time. And so it's one of those things where, maybe you were naive at that point, but it'll never happen again. You'll never make that same mistake twice.
Right. So for sure, like checking once a month on my finances wasn't enough. Right.
Yep.
So two things, we look at that a lot better, check on those things, a lot more often. And also we retired mom, or my wife, Stacy, and then brought her in to do all the financial pieces. So that helps on both sides.
Yep. Oh man, there's something I was going to say about that. I don't know. Go on. It'll come back to me.
Yeah. So I was just talking about, so there's the financial ones, and then you have the relationship ones, right? So like, okay, so I'm gonna talk about something that's not fun, but like one of the hardest pieces like this, where, somebody may be reaping where you didn't sow, and it's hard to talk about, but like a marriage. So if a marriage dissolves or divorces, and let's just pretend somebody cheated, then that person went into the wrong, and then everybody gets swept up into that. Not only kids, not only the spouse who didn't know or who was naive or, just trusted blindly. And I'm not saying that like, it's your fault. It's just people just trust, right? It's not a fault. Like if you're a trusting person, that's not a fault. Somebody took advantage of you, right? So
well, in a marriage, that's what you're supposed to do as a spouse. You're supposed to trust.
Right.
So it's like, it's not a bad thing.
Right. So if the marriage is going down, dissolving, the kids go down with that, right? The finances go down with it. You sell all your assets. All these pieces fall apart. And then what people don't often pay attention to is the friendships. The friendship side of that, you lose your friendships too. And the reason is most people can't stay neutral. You can't stay friends with both because they're not talking, or they're hating each other, or they're talking smack about each other. So most people choose sides. And almost always you'll see men with men and women with women, and it's not healthy. So in that situation, if you're a friend and you have friends that are divorcing, you have to stay back, or you have to stay neutral. And it's so hard. And I'm sure if you're going through a divorce, those people probably feel like my friends are abandoning me. But on the other side, if you're a friend who has to go through that, you literally don't know how to help, because you talk to them and it's like, blah. You ask them questions, it's blah. Hey, can I help you? Blah. So you're just like, okay, well, I'm here. Let me know what I can do. Right. So you just have to weather the storm. So those are more situations where people get thrown into, like, I didn't do any labor against the marriage, but now I'm reaping that where I didn't sow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember what I was gonna say. The other thing too, and I think it's probably the next point you got, so maybe I'm jumping ahead, but is sometimes when we talk about sowing and reaping, we also need to understand that there is an evil plan out there to knock us off our path.
Yeah.
And the work of the enemy sometimes works through other people. So yeah, it is the office manager that stole. It is the spouse that maybe cheated, or the business person that's doing, tax evasion or whatever it is. But sometimes that also is allowed through the working of Satan to try to knock us off, to try to get your practice to have to dissolve, or for you to knock you out of being a spirit-filled clinical psychologist, to maybe separate the marriage because there's a huge calling upon the kid's life. And so now the kids have to battle that. I mean, it's so much deeper than just one person doing things and sowing some evil. And now all of that is interworked and interweaved to bump us off the plan and the path that God has for us. And that's the work of the enemy.
Yeah. And so, that's the last point I have. The last situation is satanic attack, the devil attack. And so we call those in the Bible, it's called an assignment. Demons are assigned against Christians, assigned against a cause. And now there's an assignment against you to knock down all those pieces. And all you have to do is look at King Herod, who sent out a decree to kill all the firstborn men just to knock out baby Jesus. Right. So that's an evil decree. It's an evil assignment against God's plan. And you never forget that all those things that we don't see, it doesn't mean they don't exist. You have to really press into the spiritual world, really press into your prayer time, really press into the fasting and prayer. And so the Lord can give you spiritual eyes so you see those pieces.
Yeah. Right? And I'm really cautious as a pastor to throw out, well, it's the attack of the enemy, because like people do that just, I think, maybe a little too much. You walk out and you fall down your stairs and sprain your ankle. You're like, Satan's out to get me. Like, well, no, you didn't put salt down on your ice steps. Not everything that is bad, but I do believe that, and that's where, the scripture talks about discernment, is having discernment to know what do we feel like is a spiritual attack, and what do we feel like is also just stupidity on our end.
Mm-hmm.
You're speeding and you're going, 91 and a 70, you get caught. The devil's at it again. No. No.
I get a speed ticket and I yell out to the officer, "Not today, Satan."
No, that's not the devil. That's you're dumb.
Yeah.
So we don't say that.
Say that. The devil made me do it. The devil made me do it.
Yeah. It's like I'm really cautious about saying, I don't want to give any more credit to Satan than I have to. And so I'm not about to go around and give him more credit for trying to intervene in my life when I don't want to do that. So me and Alicia, and I know you guys are the same way. Yeah. I'm real cautious about throwing that up there. But if you do believe that there are two sides to this battle for our eternity, then you have to understand that Satan is trying to, on some level, knock us off that path.
Yeah. Especially things like in our family, like the generational curse of like teen pregnancy, right? And you take a look at the generational curse then of fatherlessness. In my life, so I have four father figures, and 3 of those 4 are dead, and the other one just got out of prison. So you take a look at that as a family curse, right? And if you take a look at the Bible, that says because like the father had visited evil altars or idolatry, worshiped other gods, and then so the generations are cursed, or because curse sounds really bad, right? Like voodoo stuff. But here's the definition of cursed is now that demonic attack has a legal right, literally a legal right, like a warrant to come into the family and infect the family, because that person opened an altar to that God or to that evil spirit. And I know that's there, and that's going to maybe creep some of you out. Sorry, but y'all that know me, you may love me, you may hate me, but you can never call me a liar. You can never call me hypocrite, because I am who I say I am, and I'll always spit truth. And if that offends you, you can text me, message me, but it is what it is. Now, on the same token, we have a conference coming up called Unlocking Your Warrior Mindset. It's for entrepreneurs. It's going to be at the Warrior Hotel. We can maybe put a link up here on this so you can look at it.
Yeah, I can drop the link in here.
Yep, it's going to be at the Warrior Hotel, and I'm literally talking on the behavioral management pieces. And this is the number one thing you're going to learn is how I fight habits, how I build habits. And number one thing I just kind of opened up the introduction to it, but delayed consequences. How do you pay attention to or beat delayed consequences? There we go. So that's just a little hint to that's where we're going. And then I have a couple coaches that are amazing. Paul Getter, you can take a look at him. He's called the Billionaire Marketer. And then Christopher Kai, who's named the Billionaire Networker by Forbes magazine. Those are my 2 business mentors personally. I talk to them every week. And, that's why we're doing all these pieces. So Tyler and I started the podcast. I realized I'm over my head. So what I know how to do is, learn and get coached. So I'm bringing them to Sioux City. So,
and once again, it's for CEO, entrepreneurs, business guys,
business owners.
It's not necessarily the Christian Resilient Conference that we've done before. This is a specific niche for business people.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yep.
Correct. How to struggle with your mindset because of delayed consequences that you didn't see coming. I'll help you predict that.
Yep. Sweet. Any final thoughts? We're gonna get out. We're trying to shoot for 30 to 40 minutes max on these shows, so we'd be a little bit more consumable for the listeners.
Yeah. So my number one thing is this: when you realize that I've done some bad work, I didn't pay attention. How do I turn around, take a look at the film, is what I say, and then correct my mistake? So let's go back to the time when I was embezzled from. First thing I did is got mad. I mean, mad, like angry mad. And I would work out a lot and still be ticked off. And it took me a long time. And then I really settled on one thing, which is, okay, number one, I gave way too much trust. And number two, I did get lazy. Like, just looking at my monthly finances once a month, like, it's easy to probably deceive me at that point, and the stuff I looked at looked good. So the sooner I can look at me and say, hey, what part did I play? I know I didn't sow in that area, so therefore I shouldn't be reaping this. But then I take a look at, okay, let's assume I'm lazy. There's a little bit of reaping there because I sowed laziness. There's a little bit of too much trust, or distrust or whatever it was. So I picked that piece up, and the sooner I can pick up one or two pieces, and then I can correct those on myself. And then next thing you know, within, half a year, we had moved and started a brand new clinic, because once I knew the mistakes to cover, I get on fire, and I'm an all or nothing guy. Like, the light switch is on or it's off, and it was off for a while because I was just kind of broken, and then it just got on, and we haven't stopped since. So my advice to you is, even if you find yourself in a place where you did not sow, rather than be mad and have anger overwhelm you, I want you to really focus on one or two pieces that you can find and improve, and then run with those two pieces, because it'll get you out of the hole.
I like that.
Okay. How about you?
Yeah. My last piece would just be cautious of who you surround yourself with. Be cautious of, if you're actually talking about planting and sowing and reaping, be cautious of who's around you and where they're planting and what they're planting, and what you're allowing to be planted in your field. We talk about boundaries, and we all have what we would consider a plot of land. You can, if you're single, that's your plot of land. For me, it would be, my 3 daughters, my wife, and this house. My ministry is a part of that plot. And I'm really cautious of who I allow onto that plot, and then who I allow to plant seeds into there. And sometimes, like we said, going on that same analogy, I allow people what I think are going to be good for my plot and my land. And then they begin to sow seeds that I don't like. And I intentionally go out and uproot those seeds, right? Through prayer, through fasting, through, no, that won't be a part of my family. No, that won't be, you won't speak that over my life. And so maybe some of you are here and you're like, man, there's some people in my life that are planting some seeds that I need to try to remove. I need to go uproot. I need to spray some Roundup on them. And then I need to say, hey, step off of my land, my plot. This is, we have one life to live. We have one family. Exactly. And that's what I would say is, let's be very cautious of who we allow to plant and to sow in our tight-knit family, whatever that looks like for you, single, married, divorced, multiple kids, stepkids, whatever that is, you understand what that looks like. So that'd be my piece of advice.
All right. Very good.
Speaking of, I gotta throw this man on blast here. He said, happy for you guys when you said mom bought us the 2 times. Nate is very hurt that mom didn't buy him one, and he's a part of the podcast team. So talking about, celebrating with others, he was also late. So he said sneaks in without the professor noticing, but I noticed because I have the chat right here and it shows me when he signed in.
Busted.
And when he didn't, he came in with squeaky tennis shoes walking down the stairs.
That's funny.
So we'll have to throw him on blast. Okay. Actually, I didn't really run this by you or not, but I do want to bring Nate on sooner than later. and have him talk about some of the career changes he's made, the
Yes.
taking the leaps of faith. If you know Nate on a personal level, he doesn't work at Shields anymore and started his photo business after me taking years and years and years of training him how to shoot photos and training him on photography. And so we maybe next week, or maybe next or in 2 weeks, or 2 weeks after that, we'll bring him on and kind of talk about taking leaps of faith. And maybe there's some listeners out there that are like, man, there's something I really want to start. How do you do it? What do you go through? What's that process look like? So I think that'd be a nice one to have moving forward.
Yeah. And that's exactly if that's you, that's exactly what we were doing at the Warrior Conference. The unlocking your warrior mindset, that's pushing you toward your next level, whatever fear that is. So
don't worry, Nate. Mom says, "Oh, I'll get you one." She's sad now.
No, she just feels bad for Nate. Like, oh, baby. Oh.
Right. All right. Before we end, I have to, what I'm saying?
Go.
There's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't. We'll leave that up there as we end this podcast. Never forget it. Always remember to renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation.
Yes.
And never forget it. There's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't. Love y'all.
All right. Peace.
I had to realize what's inside of me. For all of the people that lied to me. For all of the people that said I would fall off. Oh, boy, what a time to be alive. I wrote this for everyone, feel like they counted out. You need to look in the mirror and tell yourself it's time to be who I am now. Greatness.